our world changes first. Secondly, it changes fast. Thirdly, it changes more and more quickly. And I feel like sometimes that we need to understand that the language that was spoken 75 years ago isn't exactly the same language that's spoken today. So being able to innovate and change how you communicate a truth. The truth itself doesn't change, but how you communicate it changes a lot. And being able to innovate ways and creative ways to reach people to do the Great Commission, I think that is a huge consideration.
So I have this idea of taking like Bible stories and modernizing them and maybe filming them and telling them in a way that allows for people to connect with their everyday modern experiences to the experiences of people in Scripture. And this idea comes because I've loved telling stories. I've wanted to tell stories for a very long time, like my entire life. Like as a kid, I would draw, not very well, but I would like draw out Bible stories, and I had my own little comic strip, and I thought I was going to tell stories through novels and write them out. And eventually I decided to be a filmmaker, and a part of that was just my desire to kind of tell these stories, these things that have almost become rote or even trite, stories that we don't necessarily notice all of the intricate details in, and to tell them in a way that allows for people to connect. And so I want to do that to this day, and much of it becomes from the fact that I get to do that now as a pastor, as a preacher. I get to tell stories and people connect with them, and I see the way their eyes light up when I'm telling this story. And I think it's because of our human connection to narrative and our deep appreciation for story. I think it's baked into us. So you're asking about like the irony between being like a storyteller and being a pastor. And I actually don't see the two as being disconnected or disjointed in any meaningful way. I think most people kind of see this like at some point in my life, I decided to stop being a filmmaker and to start going into ministry. And in so many ways, like there hasn't been a year since making that decision to like move towards ministry. There hasn't been a year where I wasn't also behind the camera and telling some type of story in a narrative sense. Even as a preacher, much of what I do is tell stories from my own personal experience, and of course telling the stories of Scripture. Jesus, if we intend to model our communication after Jesus, he's a great storyteller. I mean, we call them parables, but they were all fiction and maybe even some non-fiction stories that he was either making up on the spot, taking from the things that he'd seen around, but he was constantly telling stories, constantly. So I don't see them as different. I think that's probably the most effective way to communicate.
Film has always been my preferred method of creativity, or just my preferred medium of creativity. I grew up making short videos from an early age. I remember there being, Hope Channel production people at my house in Brazil, like filming our house, and I just wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be in the spotlight, I wanted to be on camera. I loved it. And I grew up watching a lot of movies, and growing up Seventh-day Adventist in a relatively conservative environment, I knew what I was allowed to do and not allowed to do on Sabbath. Watching movies was one of the things I wasn't allowed to do, but making movies was something I was allowed to do. So I took advantage of that, and I was able to take these stories that I would listen to in Sabbath school, or that my dad would read to us for worship or during the week, and try to reinvent them in a way that made sense for me as a female, as a young child. And I remember taking these Bible stories where I didn't feel like I saw myself in them and placing myself in them. Whether that was reenacting the story of Moses, but changing all the names to female names with my female girlfriends at the time filming, and with my sisters. or even kind of taking these male identities and playing them out, just so I could feel a part of this story, of this narrative. And that's how my creativity started, was taking something familiar, something that I believed in, something that structured my worldview, but creating it in a way that made more sense to me at that time in my life. And from then on, I just knew that I wanted to keep doing this, that I wanted to tell stories that would help people feel more connected to one another, just like I would take the story of Moses and add more female characters other than Miriam and Zipporah, make Moses female, make Aaron female, just so that I could feel connected to that story as well. I wanted to translate that empathy and that connection when I wanted to be a professional filmmaker. I wanted to help people tell stories that not only engage with the issues, but actually make a difference in people's lives and in the world. I don't think Mosita made a difference in the world, but it made a difference in my world, and therefore led me to keep telling stories that hopefully compels others. I think when it comes to my creative work, it always takes me a little bit of time to appreciate it or to be proud of it. I struggle with feeling pride in my work a lot of times, whether because initially it's not something I'm really in love with or it's someone telling me what to do. But when I have full reins and all the control, and even though I know what I want, I'm executing it the way I want it, it takes a long time for that pride, or that's, not the selfish pride, but the just pride in yourself that you accomplished something that was done the way you wanted, to settle in. And so for me, after I made my documentary film, Sisterly, about the relationship with Lisa and I, it took, up until a few months ago. The film was made in 2017, and many years have gone by, but I was just too close to that project to see the scope of it and to see the impact it's done on other people's lives. And I've had people come up to me and tell me the difference or how meaningful it was. It just took a long time for that feeling to settle in, to really appreciate the hard work that I put in to do that. So I think now I can actually say that the work that I'm most proud of is my film Sisterly. I know that it's taken me places that I never thought I could go. It's opened doors that I never thought even existed, but I haven't been able to be proud of that work just because I don't think I was ever taught to be proud of the things you make, to just make them and let them go. But there's a difference between being show-offy and kind of being boastful about your work and being kind to yourself about your work and valuing yourself and loving yourself. And sometimes you need to love yourself and value yourself before you can value your work. And so after many years, I think I am proud to say that I do love the work I do and make and create.
There was a 60 Minutes episode with Morley Safer about millennials who were coming of age and were coming into the workplace. And it grabbed my attention. As a local branch manager, I was interviewing these young people at the time, and very different ways of communicating, different styles, different outlooks on the world, and was struggling with that. So this news story really caught my attention, and it rang true to me that this was what we were trying to manage. It wasn't a good thing or a bad thing, it was just different. It was something I had personally never seen before. Later, I ended up kind of shelving it for a number of years, and then later as a sales and marketing director for the company I was employed at the time, I went to a professional conference, and in that conference was a seminar on selling to different generations. And that caught my attention, so I went to the seminar, and again, there was this whole discussion about all the different generations and how they interacted with people and how they interpreted information and so forth. And that really grabbed my attention. So I thought that when I got back home, I would develop a sales program for my sales team, giving them this information. I thought it would really help them do their jobs better. And about a week after that, I was sitting in church listening to our pastor preach a sermon. Cannot for the life of me to this day remember what the sermon was about, but I remember the light switch being turned on that based on what he was saying, generational communications in the church was a real issue. And so that caught my attention even bigger. So I ended up taking the program that I was doing for salespeople and flipping it over to the church with a spiritual aspect from a biblical context and so forth. And that got me doing seminars within the church. Started out at our local church, and not too long before I was starting to get invited around to do them in other places as well. You know, God's got a funny way of working stuff out. I finished up a series for a church one time. This was every other week I went down to that church on Sabbath afternoons, and we finished up with Generation Z, which is the last generation that's in the church that we were talking about. And an older lady came up to me and said, you know, I want you to know that I called all of my kids last night and I apologized to them for how I've communicated with them all these years, because I didn't understand them. I couldn't understand why they weren't more like me. And particularly her youngest daughter, I guess they hadn't spoken in a number of years. And they had a 2-hour-long conversation that night. And after I finished picking my jaw up off the floor from hearing that, I understood the impact of what this particular conversation has on so many people. That's not the first one nor the last one, but that was the most powerful one for me. There's been a lot of surprising things. Mainly, it's changed how I view the world. I feel like I'm better able to see people, and I'm better able to more immediately understand what's going on with them, rather than just understanding the surface. Situation that comes to mind is we saw a young man getting off a school bus once, my wife and I did, and she usually comes to all of my seminars, and we saw this young man walking down the road toward us after getting off the school bus, and his face was obviously just racked with pain. He was hurting about something, but we could see it. And I was immediately struck with the fact that I could see it, and I don't think I was able to before. Or if I saw it, I didn't recognize it for what it was, and I thought that was a real powerful indicator of how all of this journey has changed me. Creativity is finding ways to get things done. There's no rules when it comes to getting things done. There's some parameters, don't get me wrong, but we're forever being handed a situation and figuring out how to function within it. COVID-19 is a great example. We got handed a situation within a few months. Suddenly we weren't able to be in our churches and we weren't able to be together, and yet we were still needing to continue our relationships and continuing to hold church services and figuring out how to manage finances and so on. These were big, complicated issues, and that's what that is. That's being able to find ways to get the job done.
So I've said this publicly a lot, I don't consider myself a creative individual. I've never identified with like filmmaker or cinematographer or any of those kinds of things. And so to be invited to play exclusively that role felt really daunting, if I'm honest. 500 videos on the channel, great, but most of them are me sitting in like at a desk and with like just one singular shot. And like, it doesn't take very much skill to do that well. But to go and in each location to try and think of a creative way to tell this story, like all of that felt so impossible. I've never been to school for this, never taken classes on it, just like, what do I do? And so when we sit down for those first interviews, I'm thinking, I think this looks okay, I think this works, and there's a whole like host of insecurities that come up with that. But you know, as you do this more, and as you get to talk to more and more people, as you get to take some of the photos, you start to find a rhythm and a lens with which you see the world, and you want to share it with other people. And so, you know, even though this wasn't something that I would have ever really, like, yes, I could do this, here's my resume, like, I'm the guy for you, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this team. It's challenged me and grown me in so many ways. It's challenged me as a human being, as a follower of Jesus, and also as a content creator, photographer, cinematographer kind of a person as well.